Alrighty. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony Tafoya, and I'm the Vice President of Philanthropic Events for the Leos Club. I would like to welcome all of you from around the globe to the Heart to Heart Teen Unity Forum. We are so happy you are able to join us this afternoon. We have a group of adept and dynamic speakers who will be sharing their stories today. During these times of isolation and tension, we understand
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
that the pandemic has affected us all in more ways than one. Therefore, we as a club felt the need to bring our beloved community together to cherish and encourage the diversity of the people within our communities. Our wish is to bring unity in a time of tension and encourage understanding in a time of confusion. We would like to welcome you to our committee members that you'll be meeting throughout the day. Now, it is with such great pleasure for me to introduce our first speaker, County of Riverside Supervisor V. Manuel Perez. Supervisor Perez is an exceptional leader and has shown adaptability during these tough times. In 2008, he won his party's nomination as Democratic candidate in California's 80th State Assembly, and he currently serves as Riverside County Supervisor. He has volunteered and participated in a pervasive set of events, from serving as a healthcare director for the Coachella School Board, expanding and contributing to health coverage for everyone in the district, to supporting the status of boys and men of color as chair of Stimulus, Economy Recovery, and Jobs. It is my great honor to introduce Supervisor Perez. Okay, due to some technical difficulties, we're going to have to move on to board member Alex Chen, who will introduce our next speaker.
For our next speaker, we are happy to introduce Michelet Smith-Tynes. A truly inspiring figure, Mrs. Smith-Tynes is an accomplished author, dedicated educator, and visual and performing arts specialist. Her experience in public speaking, interviewing, and writing has allowed her to conduct her own informative lectures on Instagram, where she spreads her message of hope, of encouragement, and of spirituality and love. She was once unfortunate enough to have come across a severe case of anxiety and depression, recording her recent near-death experience in her latest biography, Taming the Beast of Anxiety. This powerful memoir is both inspiring and enlightening during these difficult times, as people of all backgrounds and ages increasingly struggle with such mental hindrances. Please welcome Mrs. Smith-Tynes.
Hello, my name is Michelet Smith-Tynes. I am a journalist, an author, and a teacher. My motto is, honest dialogue built on pure intention can incite change. Lately, I've done a lot of live shows on Instagram dealing with racial trauma and mental health. Since April, I have interviewed people of different races from the UK, India, Canada, and of course, the United States. It has been an amazing experience. I'm honored to be here with all of you today. I am inspired by the work that you young people are doing. Teens today are vocal, dedicated, educated, resourceful, committed, and wise beyond their years. Thank you for providing me with such a great opportunity to be a part of the amazing work that all of you are doing. I appreciate you, all of you. Your mission, which is to bring people closer during this time of separation and see the true meaning of empathy and togetherness, well, those words are close to my heart. Our world has seen unprecedented change in just a few short months. More than 170,000 people have died due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the number keeps rising every day. Deepest condolences if you or your family have been affected. After months on lockdown, our country witnessed the death of an American citizen at the hands of a public servant, which sparked protests. The American citizen was George Floyd, and the public servant was a police officer. There was so much raw emotion, and so many Americans have been confined to their homes for a long time. We took to the streets and found our voice amid the pain. I feel bad that few adults have taken the time to wade through all the chaos and explain to you kids, literally, just what in the world is going on. I'm pretty sure you've seen the BLM protests. You may even chant Black Lives Matter with your friends. But what does that really mean? As a teen, you might say that to support your friends or because the concept is meaningful. But I'm a teacher. My job is to guide you. I don't want you to just hop on the bandwagon without knowing the true meaning of the term. The statement Black Lives Matter is said as a reminder and to draw attention to the issue of American citizens killed by those who take an oath to protect and serve them, police officers. There are Americans who are murdered simply because of their skin color. It is said to remind America that its African American citizens should never have been traumatized, abused, and even killed by its police officers. It is a declaration that this must stop. The deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Rayshard Brooks, and others have drawn the spotlight to so many injustices in this country. Also, the overtly racist murder of Ahmaud Arbery because of his skin color drew even more blaring attention to the reality of hatred on the basis of skin color in America. I also have my own personal experience with police officers who abused their authority. When I was only 14, my mother and I were racially profiled. Well, what does that mean? Profiling is when police officers stop and harass individuals on the basis of skin color. The darker a person's skin color, the more likely they are to be profiled. This happens in Black communities, but in my case, my mother and I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood. The police officers that profiled us said later that they had been told during the morning roll call to be on the lookout for 2 male robbers. At the time, I was very tiny and certainly didn't look anything like a male robber. My mother had gone to the bank, and as she left, 2 police officers followed her out of the parking lot. They sped in front of her with sirens blaring, then jumped out with their guns drawn. I jumped out screaming at them not to shoot. I didn't realize I could have been shot just for that. We were allowed to leave. Much later, my mother took the officers to court and won a settlement. But think about it, who really won that day? No one. Settlements for things like these are funded by taxpayers, just like police salaries are. And I was certainly no winner. I had nightmares for years. It took me forever to learn how to drive because I was paranoid of the police. Many of my friends, especially my male friends, have had similar experiences. My husband told me about when he first started driving and was pulled over his first time out with his brand new driver license. You imagine that. You finally get your freedom and your independence. Your parents allow you to take the car out with your friends. You pick everyone up, and then soon after that, you're pulled over and a gun is pointed in your face. You've done nothing wrong. It's all because of the color of your skin. Do you feel the trauma in that? Almost every Black man I know, especially those who are dark-skinned, have had similar experiences. As a result, mothers of Black children have different worries than other mothers. Parents of Black children have to educate them about all of this at a very early age. We have to tell our kids that the world will treat them differently because of their skin color. Does it seem fair to you that mothers of Black children, especially Black boys, have to have a separate fear than other mothers? Just looking at these examples, does it really seem like all Americans are free? Freedom is not just about not having to walk around in chains. Freedom it's also an ease of thinking. Freedom is a state of mind. The darker you are in this country, the less freedom of mind and the less peace you have. Imagine walking around with that kind of trauma every day. Similar things may have happened to your darker skinned classmates without you even knowing. How many opportunities do we have to talk about such things? Indeed, for many African Americans, our very lives have depended on white people not knowing how we truly feel. Think about the stories I've told you. If anyone, myself included, had gotten in a police officer's face and started yelling and cursing, well, it's pretty easy to see that my life could just simply be taken away from me, isn't it? For most Black people, this is a very real fear and a danger that is always at the forefront of our minds. My early experiences with the police traumatized me in ways that I struggle with to this day. All of those experiences create deep emotional wounds. Have you ever heard of childhood wounds? Well, when someone goes through something very tragic or traumatizing as a young child, they'll need a lot of help dealing with all of that pain from the past as they become an adult. If not, they'll end up being very mean and hateful. They'll make bad decisions in life. Their toxic actions can end up hurting other people, pretty much everyone they encounter. Now, compare America to a child with these wounds who is trying to navigate through a dysfunctional family. We have witnessed in our America over the past several months, what we have seen has been our country's attempts at healing its childhood wounds. This country was built on racism, hatred, and violence, dysfunction in its most destructive forms. For instance, did you know that the historical formation and foundation of the police was to catch slaves, to recover humans as property? Think about that. Those who are supposed to protect and serve all American citizens instead have a history built on hurting people of color. When you look at America through that lens, does it make a little more sense why some people are now calling to defund the police? This is what is meant by systemic racism. Systemic racism infects systems that are supposed to protect its citizens. You can see the ugly stains of racism in housing, the educational system, law enforcement, and the judicial system. There is a violence that is attached to the way that Black people are viewed and treated in this country. Now, of course, no one can stop a person from being a racist, but there are supposed to be laws to protect my life, my livelihood, and my safety. This is especially true of the police. If you're a racist and you have a position of power to take someone's life and your racist actions, well, that's a problem. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. For instance, did you know that Thomas Jefferson owned slaves and had biracial children from his slaves? Did you know that the New York Stock Exchange was built on top of African burial grounds on the bodies of slaves. Have you ever heard of Black Wall Street? Well, at a time when America segregated us by moving us away from whites, we thrived. We had amazing communities like one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it had it all. In the 20s, Blacks in the Greenwood community lived in opulence with schools, hotels, movie theaters, and newspapers. There were also many Black doctors and lawyers living and working in Greenwood. But in 1921, the community was destroyed by a white racist mob who was jealous and angry of the success. More than 300 people were killed. 35 square blocks were destroyed. The mob dropped dynamite as they flew overhead in planes. America didn't want us. We thrived where we were planted, and then we were killed. Looking at the end of the story, some people assume that Black people who live in poor communities want to live that way. But can you now see how Black communities were created? Yes, racism is as old as America itself. In some ways, America is afraid of its own history. So why are people so angry about all of it? My theory is that none are properly taught history. This promotes misunderstandings. Most Americans don't know the true history of their country. We all need to know the full richness of history. We need to give credence to the horrible things that have happened on American soil. Painting a beautiful but false picture of our country does no favors to anyone. In fact, it's doing a disservice to us all. Without the backdrop of history, people fuel arguments on raw emotion without knowing the underlying background. It's like coming to the end of a book, reading the last page, then judging the entire story without knowing the pages that came before. Understanding the pages that came before and reading the entire proverbial book can help you to feel the curse of intergenerational racism and its hatred and violence. Otherwise, people look at a situation and say, well, why is it okay to say Black power and Mexican pride and all of this, but then as soon as somebody says white power or white pride, then it's a problem? Well, there's a history there that's not being taught. I'm a teacher, so I know you're not being taught all of this in school. You're not learning a true reflection of history through a timeline that makes sense. Even the label with which to call us often becomes convoluted. There has been a long history of choices, probably starting with the term Negro, derived from the Spanish word negro, meaning Black. Another very derogatory term has derived from this word. The word seems to cause a lot of confusion because it seems fine for Black people to use the derogatory term amongst themselves, but it causes a huge racial and ethical problem when others use it. This is because, like in so many situations, Black folk have taken the pain and turned it into power. In reference to myself, I prefer the term Black. I refer to my American brothers and sisters as Black folk. I think of Black folk around the world who are united with me by color and plight as Pan-Africans, which is an all-encompassing term. For people of other races who are referring to us, it's probably best to use the term African American. But as you can see, there are many different outlooks for different groups of people. There are many different types of people within any particular race. As we think of history, it's important to know that some problems started with the naming of some people as Black and others as white. America has used these terms to its advantage and decides when some people can have the title of white or not. For instance, America has not always considered Italians, Irish, Jewish, and others to be white. Think about the ways that using these terms can affect someone's quality of life. Again, it's important not to assign any type of behavior to an entire race. Now, of course, there are some white people who are simply racist. They are married to their point of view, and it would be a miracle for anyone or anything to change that. These individuals deliberately gaslight others. Well, what is gaslighting? It's when someone creates so much confusion that it makes someone question their own experience. People do this by changing the subject, or they'll ask for statistics or irrelevant details, or they'll label things as political and try to limit your right to talk about it. This type of behavior is draining and a waste of time. I'm a teacher of people, but I don't allow anyone to waste my time. I will not be baited into an argument. Always know that issues of police murdering or abusing citizens is not politics. These are human rights issues. If you are a member of the Student United Nations, forensics, or speech and debate, these topics are topics that our nation needs to be dealing with. Don't let the dialogue sputter out. Open your mouth and keep talking. Of course, there are also the thoughts and opinions of African Americans to consider. Part of developing the new America will need to come with the understanding that all Black people do not think the same way. For instance, some Black people say they're tired of explaining, then they shut down and refuse to talk about any of the racial issues. Well, this is because we have talked and explained for years. Throughout history, Black people have boycotted and had sit-ins, been beaten, been hosed, marched on Washington, protested both peacefully and violently, written governors, senators, presidents, lost their jobs, had their lives threatened, and had their lives taken, all to tell America about the horrors of its racism. Isn't it exasperating just simply listening to that? Surely you can understand that level of frustration. Yet, almost on cue, the young people of America have stepped up to the plate. You all have done the protests. You have arranged events like this one to strengthen your thinking skills and sharpen your thought process. Again, for that, I thank you. Many of you have bravely stood up to the generations before you, and you have eloquently told them that racism has no place in your life. Throughout all of this, we can start to see that we can't lump any group of people into one heap, especially using words like racist or thug or any other type of label. Take time to learn about each situation and the people involved. Then judge for yourself if it's right or wrong. So let's go back to my motto and let's really think about it. Let's break it all down. Honest dialogue built on pure intention can incite change. So first of all, let's be honest. We have to tell the truth about what we think, feel, and believe. And then what is a dialogue? Well, that's a conversation, a give and take verbal dance between two people. Each one gives the other one an opportunity to talk. Each one also reserves the power of saying, I don't know, rather than just trying to win an argument. Both start to see that there is no argument. This is where pure intention comes in. Well, but what is that? Pure intention is what happens when we forget about race and politics and gender. We throw all the labels out the window. We deal with each other as human beings. When we see each other on a human level, we become concerned about one another's pain. At a very deep level, you start to see the pain of your fellow human as your own pain. We show care and concern. We move forward with compassion. Well, what is that? Compassion is equal parts love, patience, and forgiveness. This will allow us to step forward in empathy. Now, empathy is putting yourself in the other person's situation. As the saying goes, you walk a mile in their shoes, and you really care enough to find out what they're going through. You actively listen to them. You trust the stories your friends are telling you about racism. I have so much respect for many of you because you already do that. If you have friends that never spoke out until the past few months, maybe now you're starting to understand why you never knew they felt that way. Okay, so now what does incite mean? The word incite actually has somewhat negative connotations. Usually people think of things like inciting a riot or inciting anger, but I chose that word strategically. I prefer to think of incite as sparking something, as being an active catalyst for something that would not have happened otherwise. Well, like what? Change. Our country needs to change. We need to give up the painful history of violence and racism and create a country that lives up to the promise that is America. Again, please do not let this dialogue end. Dialogue on so many topics is often closed in this country. We get uncomfortable because we never have these discussions. People stay hurt based on misunderstandings and lack of information. They stay stuck in assumptions and they don't ask questions, which can be dangerous. If we don't learn from history and make some changes, you will see these same exact problems with your children and your grandchildren. This is why I'm so proud of all of you for making some moves to change these ways of thinking and to rebuild your America. I'm willing to do whatever I can to help you in this process. Consider it a process. But where do we start? It seems like such a huge task, and it's hard to figure out where to even grab a chunk from all of this. Well, remember, start with compassion, then move to empathy. Think about the personal stories I've shared with you and let that inspire you to make things better. For instance, what does it mean to be an ally? Like I said before, it just means trusting others' experiences about racism. That feeling of injustice is the start of allyship. Being an ally also means speaking up when you see a person of another race being mistreated. You guys are standing up for what is right, and I applaud you. There are many adults who don't have the courage that you young people have. Let's learn to embrace differences. Make a conscious decision to do this internally within your own individual heart and mind. Then think of the physical actions that can complement this change. Becoming an ally is a chance for us to unite, not only as Americans, but more importantly, as humans. We start to see racism as an American problem and a human rights issue, not a political issue. So what realities do we need to step forward into the future with? Like, for instance, what happens when you do your best and then something still goes wrong? Well, remember, not all Black people will see things the same way. You might implement everything you have learned and come across a Black person that has no intentions of working with you. Well, be good anyway. Do your best anyway. See it as part of your evolution as a human. Don't let anyone stop you from growing as a human being. Don't let anyone's ignorance deter you from your goal. Part of all of this is understanding that we each get a chance to make our own decisions and live life according to our own standards. Let others decide their thoughts and actions for themselves while you get to make those choices for you. Develop compassion for yourself and others and never stop growing. So what did you learn from all of this? What is something that you learned that challenged the way that you thought before you heard me speak? Did anything that I said today lead you to become more empathetic, no matter what your race is? Reflect on what you learned. This is the start of changing your thought process. Then branch out a little at a time. Try to make a friend of another race. Let empathy be your badge. Wear it like you wear your clothes. Remember, keep it simple, start small, and decide on one small thing you can do today. Change starts with you. You could even start with thanking yourself for listening to me today. You paid attention to my entire speech. Yay, you! I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I hope my words have touched your heart and inspired you to move forward in positive action. Follow me across social media by searching my name, Mishley Smith Tynes. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Twitter, but my current favorite seems to be Instagram because I love doing live shows. I also have a kid-friendly account at the Instagram handle @TeacherTynes. Again, thank you so much for listening. I'd love to take your questions now.
It seems we have a question from an anonymous attendee.
Yes.
This person asked, what should I do if my family or friends make racist remarks?
That's a really good question. Remember, at the end of my entire speech, all you can really do is count on yourself to change. But as you start to see yourself change, others actually witness the change within you, and then they change without much effort from you. So just change yourself. And if you are offended by those things, you can tell them it's offensive. And if that's not received well, then you keep being a good person and keep doing good things. Change will come through you.
And I'd like to say something else. Since no one is stepping up, I'd actually like to ask a question of my own.
Awesome.
If I'm just a teen, is it really possible for me to do anything about the long history of racism in America?
I would like to say an emphatic yes, yes, and more yes. I am so proud of what you teenagers are doing. Like I said in my speech, you guys are going to protests, you're organizing events like this one, and most importantly, you're doing the work in action. You're standing up for your classmates when you see something happening in school. You're going to talk to your counselors in school to tell them when you see something happening. And you're trying to reach out and you're trying to change things. Don't ever doubt that you can just really influence intense change as a young person. You guys are inspiring me. I'm an adult and I'm a grown up, but I don't want you guys to give up in any way, shape, or form. I am so proud of you. I can't say it enough. I'm so proud of you.
Well, since we ran out of time, we'd like to thank you, Mrs. Smith Tynes, for your effort to illuminate this sensitive topic, which many are afraid of broaching in today's society, resulting in a shortage of similar brave spirits. We appreciate your courage and willingness to step up to the task, and constructive insight such as yours is always welcome, as it helps to spur social equality one community at a time. Now let me hand the floor back over to Anthony Tafoya.
Hello, everyone. We want to apologize for the initial technical difficulties, but with that being said, let us warmly re-welcome our first speaker, Manuel Perez.
Okay, I think I'm on. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, thank you. Michelle, your words are inspiring, and I want to say thank you for your education, and you have a new follower here, okay? So I'm going to sign up after all this is said and done. So I'll let you know that I appreciate what you had to teach today. And I want to say good afternoon to all of you, and my name is Victor Manuel Perez. I am the Riverside County Supervisor for the 4th District, representing Eastern Riverside County, which is the desert area, the Coachella Valley, starting from Palm Springs, Desert Hot Springs, all the way down to the Salton Sea area, all the way up to Blythe. It's the largest district in the county of Riverside, about 5,000 square miles. However, we all represent, there's 5 supervisors, there's 5 districts. We all represent the same amount of individuals, around 460,000 constituents. And I'm serving this year as the chair for the County Board of Supervisors, being the first Latino, the first Chicano, ever from the county of Riverside to be in this position, especially from the 4th District, being the son of immigrant farm workers. And for me, it's an honor to be in this post and to be in this position, representing not only my constituents, but as well leading the charge against racism on the County Board of Supervisors. And with that said, I also want to thank the Heart of Temecula Leo Club and your advisor, Beth Lascola, for creating this space to discuss racism, and the students that are all engaged and involved, Skylar, Anthony, and others that are involved with this movement, with this effort to rid racism and discrimination. We know that youth are passionate for change, and sometimes they don't have adults they can talk to about racism. And so I think this is where, for example, yourself, Advisor Beth Lascola, and other educators that may be on, we really appreciate, I appreciate your efforts. And so we ask a question, why? Why is it that this type of space to discuss racism doesn't always exist? And maybe because it's uncomfortable. Maybe because it's real, because it's raw, because we want to believe that we live in a colorblind society. Because we only discuss racism when events occur, such as the murder of George Floyd, or when we hear about the border wall, or 9/11. We handicap, in my opinion, our youth when we don't discuss race and identity. And we do that, when we do that, we decide to ignore and limit who we are. So I want to start by acknowledging the opportunity you have created, because we should all be involved and work together to fight racism and be part of solutions to make things better. By doing so, makes us all active participants in the fight for justice as practitioners of anti-racism. Now, this is not just about being culturally competent. This is about going further. This is about being intentional and being conscious of the historical experiences that have led to modern day injustice. It is about being engaged today and being an active participant against systemic racism, against discrimination and disparities embedded as normal practice within our society or organizations such as criminal justice, healthcare, employment, education, housing, political structures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But before I get a little too far ahead of myself, youth, you are the generation to bring opportunity for change. You are the power to transform our conditions and make things better for everyone. You are now and the future of our humanity. So speaking of humanity and human rights, we are all part of one family. We're all born in the world and have a life in which we breathe, we eat, we experience happiness, sadness, sense danger, have hope, and feel love. We're all human beings and we're all connected, directly and indirectly. Linked together as human beings, we all have human rights. These are universal and are deserved by everybody, no matter who or where we are. As Americans, we are privileged to live in a place where its founding idea is the equality of human beings. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And although we have these ideals, we know that for decades and centuries, not every person has been able to share the blessings of equal treatment, freedom, and life in the United States of America. Unfortunately, people have had their rights violated when they are discriminated against by differences rather than treated as equals. In too many cases lately, people of color have lost right to live altogether because of racism. Oscar Grant, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd are all some of our own who have been killed by racism. And I say our own because even if we might not know them, we are all members of the human family. Not any individual should have to die like they did. They could be your sister or brother, your aunt, your uncle, your father or your mother. They could be your best friend. They could be your neighbor. Racism is very serious and very real. And it is a problem. It holds back the promise that everyone has the opportunity to have a rich and fulfilling life. And furthermore, as scholar and historian Dr. Abraham X. Kendall has stated, we should look at racism as an addiction. Once we do, as we do alcoholism and drug abuse, we then recognize it, and we recognize our mistakes and make an effort to make change. We do so with the hopes of making change one day at a time. Can you imagine if everyone in society recognized this addiction? When we talk about racism, it can be overt, openly displayed, and de facto, which means written in law, such as the Jim Crow laws that stole many freedoms from African Americans in the South after the Civil War. I recently had a Zoom meeting where I listened to African American leadership in my community in the 4th District. Many shared their experiences of being racially profiled by law enforcement in recent years. Where they serve at a church, they have had a gun drawn on them by police while they were opening up the church, or racially profiled and questioned by police because they matched a description, or being pulled over with their family in the vehicle and asked where they were going. There was frustration that here we are in the year 2020, and we're still talking about traffic stops, and the hope that we won't be having this same conversation 30 years from now. But racism is not always blatant. When I grew up, I felt discrimination, but I perhaps did not notice it as clearly until I connected the dots when I went off to college. We don't always see it right away, but it exists when people are not able to have access to a loan to purchase a house, or not given an interview when they are qualified for a specific job, or in my case, growing up in the barrios of Coachella, questioning why, for example, when I was a kid growing up with my friends, why we didn't have a park, a green space, easily accessible so that we can play football. And instead we played on the street or in the nearby desert. It exists in the form of systemic racism, when there are systems such as jails and prisons that over-incarcerate people of color, or when unemployment is consistently higher among African Americans, no matter whether the economy is up or down. The impact of systemic racism is evident, and disproportionate incidences of police brutality, incarceration, school suspensions, health inequities among communities of color nationwide. Living with the threat of discrimination and violence creates toxic stress, impacting physical and mental health. Racism exists in many forms. It could be the man who comes into the library trying to cancel an event that celebrates another culture. It could be the woman harassing the gardener who was working outside in 100-degree heat, demanding to see proof of his citizenship. It could be the person who, presented with all these examples that people of color experience all the time on an ongoing basis, still closes his or her eyes to it or refuses to accept that racism exists. Now, how can we work for the betterment of humankind so that everybody has freedom and opportunity and a democracy for all? What have we seen in the last 3 months is the launch of a movement in this nation and in the world. People of all ages, walks of life, and particularly young people are coming together. They want to take action and achieve progress so we're not in the same situations years from now. It's so much more than policing. It's also about ensuring our people have the tools they need to be successful and address topics such as income inequality, access to healthcare, and ensuring that people are not homeless. In Riverside County, along with my colleagues, we have been working with many people to do what we can at the local level. We have taken some steps toward an overall action plan. We recently passed a resolution declaring that racism is a public health crisis. Some of the places that have also done this are San Bernardino County, the city of Riverside, the city of Coachella, the city of Palm Springs, the city of Moreno Valley, and even the state of Ohio. I'm proud Riverside County has joined many other local governments in declaring racism as a public health crisis and start conversations to address racism and its underlying issues, especially as we discuss the social determinants of health and underlying disproportionate disparities when it comes to COVID, public health overall, housing, food insecurity, employment, education, criminal justice reforms, etc. We are bringing people together as part of a listening session or listening sessions and creating task forces to listen to the concerns of our communities and look inside our departments and these issues and where we can improve and how we can better invest in our people and communities and fund the programs and services that people need to be successful. We are forming a community oversight committee for public safety. We trust public safety, law enforcement to protect us and innocent people from harm. Law enforcement officers have enormous power in their hands. We need to make sure there is accountability and oversight, that people have a voice at the table where they can get concerns addressed and work on solutions. And although difficult, this is our commitment. This is my commitment. And it is in building a more just system within the county of Riverside. But none of this came about on its own. With my colleagues, I worked to advocate for these policies and get them passed. It was not easy. In fact, it was very difficult, but we did not give up and we worked together to get these passed. Change is going to take all of us working together, and it takes struggle, but we can't give up on it. And so I also want to thank our executive staff and especially Supervisor Chuck Washington alongside Supervisor Spiegel, Jeffries, and Hewitt in advancing those efforts with a 5-0 vote. Every generation has the opportunity to create a new world. As Barack Obama once expressed, our former president said, "This is our moment, and this is our time. This is our opportunity to create a brighter world for humanity and human rights, where everyone can fulfill their highest potential." It is motivating and inspirational to see that youth are doing an outstanding job in driving this progress. There are many ways to be involved. You can take part in the county workshops that we're organizing. It is crucial that you use your right to vote. If you're not old enough to vote, and you're maybe a little too young, you can still make a difference by registering people to vote or by volunteering and getting engaged with a local organization on the ground, or even a small donation to a charity that you believe in. In closing, young ladies and young men, this is our moment. This is our time. This is your moment. This is your time. Look at the power you have around you. We have people power. In your case, you have student power. And recognize that power, because that soul power that you have can never be taken from you. I remember my days when I was working on my master's degree at Harvard University. There was a professor by the name of Chuck Willey, and he had the pleasure of marching with Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement. And he started discussing with us in lecture about the significance of soul power and how that soul power is so within ourselves and so deep within us that no matter what they try to do to you, whether they try to incarcerate you or beat you up or sick dogs on you, that they will never take your soul power from you. And that soul power goes further and beyond for social justice. And I believe in your sense of self, your sense of self-agency, your capacity to change and transform. I believe in you. Are you ready for that change? Is America ready for this change? Is Riverside County ready for this change? I believe we are. Thank you. I'm Supervisor Victor Manuel Perez, and I approve this message.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez, for taking a stand against racism and for sharing your courageous words today. I know your words have inspired us all to take further action against the poison of prejudice. Now, we'll move on to Vice President and historian Emma Choi.
Thank you, Anthony and Supervisor Perez. My name is Emma Choi, and like Anthony said, I am the club historian and co-chairperson for this event. Up next is actually a relative of mine. She has starred in hit Broadway shows such as Avenue Q, 9 to 5, Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, and M. Butterfly. She has also appeared in NBC's Smash. Most recently, she starred off Broadway in Emojiland the Musical. She is here today to have a conversation with us about her experiences with prejudice and discuss the entertainment industry and how society and the entertainment industry can improve by practicing inclusivity. Now, without further ado, please welcome Broadway and screen actress Anne Harada. Hi, Anne. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. I feel very, what is the word? You know, I'm not an activist in the sense that the other speakers are. I'm not a politician. I don't work in the public sector that way. But I do believe that because I'm in the entertainment industry and because people are so influenced by kind of the entertainment they see, the shows that they watch and movies and stuff like that, that I think it's very important for everybody to realize that the presence of having minority performers is so important, and that supporting the work of minority creatives is so important, because it's all that kind of visibility only increases kind of like what I would think of as like the broad tolerance or the broad acceptance of so many different people in our society. You know, there was a time when, and in many industries this is still very true, where the entertainment is pretty much targeted towards a white audience and made by white creatives. And it's only in more recent years that there's been kind of more of a push to be more inclusive. And I just think that it's improved kind of like the entertainment out there. So it's really, I think it's empowering for people to see themselves on screen and on stage. And we're all for that. You know, many actors, you know, are trying to get together to promote a more inclusive presence, certainly on Broadway. And I think on film and TV, it's pretty obvious that people are doing a pretty good job of that. But I'm just saying that, you know, people are aware now that where they weren't before, that there are things that are missing.
Oh, yes, definitely. And we're very happy to have you here today.
Oh, thanks.
So we're going to start off with a small interview and then take questions from the audience. For our first question, how did you get started on Broadway and the entertainment industry in general?
Well, I was an intern in a Broadway producer's office. That was my first job out of college. I wanted to learn everything I could about the industry. I wasn't sure if what I was going to be. I just knew that I wanted to work in the theater. And so I figured working in a producer's office, I would learn all the different jobs that there were. And I certainly did. And while I was, you know, typing letters and making copies and answering phones, I also got to go to see auditions, and I got to go to ad meetings and things like that to find out all about the different parts of the business. And it was while I was doing that that I realized that I really wanted to be an actor, and I wanted to try to pursue that.
Oh, that's very cool. On the topic of Broadway and the entertainment industry, do you believe that Broadway could use more Asian American representation and diversity overall?
Yes, I feel very strongly about that, obviously. Yes, the percentage of Asian American Broadway performers in any given year is about 2%. And that's just not enough given our much bigger representation in the country. Very much so, Broadway shows in general have been, you know, white is always the default in casting. And I don't know if that's just laziness or what people are used to, or what, you know, the kinds of shows that people pick to do. They say, well, historically, you know, that's a bunch of white people. Well, historically, people don't usually sing and dance either. So to me, it's like if you're going to accept that, you know, a world where people burst into song and do choreographed dance numbers, I think you can accept a world where people aren't all the same. And that I've been lucky enough to be in a bunch of shows where people sort of saw past this part of me and saw who I was inside. And I've been able to do a lot of roles that aren't specifically Asian. In fact, I've done very few roles that are specifically Asian. But that I really feel like it's getting better. And I know that there are many actors of all colors that are seeing more work, and there's definitely been more of a push to diversify Broadway shows, but it is still very, we still need a lot more Asian Americans represented.
Yes, definitely. Do you believe that there is more that the industry could do to improve upon this?
Oh, of course I do. I believe the industry, such as it is, can make more of an effort to hire Asian creative teams, that is to say directors and writers and choreographers and costume design, basically everybody involved in creating the look of a show, the point of a show, kind of like, I feel like until we get more representation behind the table, it's very hard to get representation up on the stage, because people tend to just sort of gravitate towards who they know, who they've worked with before, who they're familiar with. And if you're not familiar with the Asian acting community, it would be very easy to say like, oh, well, I just don't know anybody. I can't find anybody. Well, they're there, believe me. So a lot of it is just about a lot of industries, Broadway included, is very much of a who you know, who you've worked with kind of a thing. And until we get more representation in the creating of the projects, it's going to be very, very hard to sort of change the face of Broadway.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Do you have a specific story about a time that you have encountered prejudice, and how did you overcome this?
Yes, and I do. It's kind of a weird story. I was working out of town. I was in Maine doing a show, and I was playing one of the romantic leads in this musical. And there was basically two romantic couples, and it was me and this white guy, and then two other white people playing the other romantic couple. Okay, so basically we're equal couples. We were both kind of like the young lovers. And after the show, parents brought their little girl to meet the actors backstage. And the little girl went right up to my friend, who was white and blonde, and gave her a big hug and was very excited to meet her. But she really shied away from me and really did not want to come talk to me. And I was sort of surprised, and her parents said, oh, she's not used to seeing anybody who's not like her. She's afraid of you because you're dark. And I was like, really? I just couldn't accept that. That was a cool reason, that's okay with you. She's only comfortable with white, fair people. She's never had to meet anybody who didn't look just like her. Isn't that bizarre? You don't think that's weird? But, of course you can't say that to people. But yeah, it was very hurtful and very strange, because it was really the first time I sort of thought to myself, oh, I'm not like everybody else. Because in my mind, I am. Obviously, I think I'm like everybody else, and there's no difference.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about that.
Oh, that's, I grew up in Hawaii, which is a place where Asians are the majority. So it had never crossed my mind growing up that anybody would judge me for the color of my skin or that I look different. And so when I moved to the mainland to go to college and to pursue my career, it was really strange to go, oh, right, people make assumptions about you. They don't know you can speak English. They don't know, because they're assuming stuff just from how you look. And that's still true, obviously, today. I'm like, well, I'm an American. I was born here. I speak perfect English. It doesn't matter. People will just make an assumption, and that's sort of what we've got to be very careful about. It's true with any kind of racism. You can't make assumptions based on people's looks. That's just not right, and it's not accurate. And you're going to get in trouble if that's how you live your life in the world. I truly believe that, so.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that serves as a good transition to our next question, which is, having worked on Broadway, how does New York differ from other places that you have lived in regarding racial acceptance?
I feel like New York is one of the most tolerant cosmopolitan, groovy cities in the world. And I really have had very little trouble there. But I do feel that recently, because of increased, um, open racism against Asian people, the concept of the China virus, um, that, you know, that friends of mine, Asian friends of mine, have been attacked. They've been spit on. They've been verbally abused. There was a very famous incident that happened a few weeks ago about this old lady, old Chinese lady who was attacked, and not, just completely just attacked for being Chinese, not because they were trying to rob her or do anything to her. They just lit her on fire because she was Chinese. And that's, obviously not the kind of behavior that's acceptable, or, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's terrible.
It is terrible, but like if you have people in the world who are trying to demonize a whole nother race of people because, they eat bats and they brought COVID into the country, well, that's obviously not just bullshit, but it's dangerous. Because, if people believe that sort of stuff, then they go off and they feel they can express hateful things against others. And that's not right. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, that really isn't right. Lastly, what is your biggest piece of advice for those who want to start practicing inclusivity and including that into their own lifestyles?
Well, I think, it's all about just sort of reaching out and getting to know people. It's easy for me because I am an actor and I meet all kinds of people every day in the course of my work. And because we're all actors, we have something in common and we have stuff to talk about. And, but like it's like, you find people that kind of like the things you like. You make friends however you make friends, if you all follow Pokemon, or you all watch the same TV show or whatever it is, you find people that share your likes, right? And I just feel like there's, the world is wide and there's a lot of people out there that maybe don't look like you and maybe you don't know them yet, but it wouldn't be so hard to meet them. I think it's really important just to get to know people one-on-one, because that's the only way. And if you get to know them and they get to know you, then all of a sudden you're not talking about huge chunks of, all Asian people feel this way, all Black people feel this way. It's like my friend feels like this, I feel like this. That's how you get to know what people are like.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think, your message of how we can reach out to other people is very good.
Well, it's just, you make friends the same, like you just make friends, however you do it, you know? And for me, it's just like, if I'm in a show with somebody, we're going to be friends,
Yeah.
or whatever, but like, my son is a teenager and he likes music and he's made friends like online and stuff. And he's no idea what they look like. They have no idea what he looks like, but he's friends with them. And so they have this stuff in common. And I sort of feel like, well, that's how, you have an interest in the same thing and you're passionate about something. And I just feel like it's important to reach out.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your perspective on these topics.
Again, I know that it's very limited and, but I would just encourage everyone, if you are interested in pursuing the arts, no matter how weird or bizarre it might seem, I urge you to do it. It's been the greatest thing in my life. And it's opened up so many things for me. And I encourage you. I think it's an amazing way to kind of like expand your mind.
Oh, yeah. The Broadway community seems like such a cool place.
Well, it's very small, I'll give you that. It's sort of like a very big high school drama club. So once you've worked in one show, it's like you know everybody, and it's very cool that way.
Oh, yeah, that is super cool. Now I think we're actually going to open the floor for audience questions. So if you have any questions for Anne, please type them into the chat.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Look at this question.
Let's see.
Yes, to that statement about Hamilton, a show I've seen many times. Yes, because Lynn tried very hard. Of course, the whole point of it was to show that Hamilton is a story of an immigrant, and he wanted to illustrate that by using a multicultural cast instead of, and sort of like expanding the idea of like histories about white men, and that I feel like, that was his vision, and it really helped that particular show. Not every show is going to be Hamilton, but thank goodness he felt that way, and obviously brought us that incredible gift. It's exactly what I mean when I say, not that everybody has to be Lin-Manuel, but that, that's an example of a creator, somebody who is, not white, making a project for people that are not white. He's adding his point of view to what was traditionally a very white point of view. And that's, that's the sort of magic that can happen once you sort of expand, if you like make a place at the table for a lot of different kinds of creative teams.
Yes, definitely. Over here, I have a question from this person wishes to be anonymous.
Okay.
And they're saying, are there any tips that you have on entering the theater community, especially as a POC?
Any tips that I have? No, everybody's path is going to be different in terms of like how they become actors. All I can say is it's like everything else. You do your best, you work hard, you keep auditioning, you keep putting yourself out there. You might not feel like you're what they want, and maybe you're not, but you shouldn't put yourself in a box and limit yourself because you don't think you're what the flavor of the day is. For me, I know that there have been times in my career where I've tried very hard to be not me, where I've tried to be like, young, cute, I have long hair, whatever. It never worked. It's like, I'm still me. So, but you have to be true to yourself, but that there's going to be a place for you if, it's meant to be. I really believe that.
Thank you. Let's see. Are there any more? Let's see. Actually, I have a question over here.
Okay.
It says, what inspires you to continue to perform in such high pressure industries such as Broadway and around film and TV?
That's a really good question. I don't know, honestly, anymore what inspires me to continue to perform. I feel like I still have something to give and to say. I feel like, I've been so lucky and I've had so many opportunities, and I love performing. And I know that this stop, kind of like this COVID gap, has really affected me, kind of like it has everybody else. No one's gotten to be on a stage. No one's gotten to shoot a movie. No one's gotten to do anything. But that it's very important to express yourself, and it's very important to represent. It's very important to be out there and to show people like you exist, especially if you're an actress of color. I've heard from a lot of people who have, been so happy to see themselves represented on stage. And I've been incredibly grateful to be that person for them. So I think it's important. I see this question. How is the shift between theater auditions and film? Okay, well, I'll tell you, theater auditions are really scary because they involve every part of your body. You have to sing, sometimes you have to dance, you act, and it's all right there, all on the same day, all at the same time. It's like, it's all sort of like so in this moment. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're sick or you don't feel great, too bad for you, this is your slot and you're going to go in there and you're going to do the best that you can. Film is a little more controlled in terms of, it's you and a camera. Like if you mess up a few, like they'll let you tape it again. If you mess up your lines, theater's like, too bad, you did the best you can, like in the moment, and that's just sort of how it is. That being said, I'd much rather audition for theater because it's just I'm so much more happier in that space than I am in film. But
Aw, yeah, it seems like so physically demanding to do 8 shows a week.
it is. It's like being an athlete. That's the only, it's like you have to kind of space yourself out stamina-wise. You have to stay, healthy and whatever, in shape for those 8 shows a week. It requires a lot of energy. But it's really like so rewarding to perform live for people.
Oh, yeah, it's so special.
It is. It's so special because it's the only time it's ever going to happen. It's like it runs away. It's like it happens and it's over. And then it's only you and those, 1,500 people that saw you to remember it. So it's a very special kind of art form.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Sydney says, my passion is for the arts, and I'm hoping to pursue it in the future. Is there anything you recommend with auditioning?
Recommend with auditioning. I've had some terrible auditions in the past. I don't know if you want to ask me that. I think, it's just about trying to express yourself, to show what's special about you or what's interesting about you or what you love. So I would always say, like, pick a song you really love. Pick a song you really like to sing and can sing at the drop of a hat that you don't have to think about very hard. You know what I mean? Unless it's for a very specific audition of like, learn 40 pages of Hamilton, but I mean, if it's, but when I'm saying like, it's just you singing a song, pick a song that you are like completely comfortable with and can like roll out of bed and sing, that you don't have to think too hard about, because that's what you're really going to be most at home doing. And you'll be able to be the most yourself. You won't be so caught up in your head about like, what are the words? So I basically just about showing you and who you are. That's all.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you see if there's any more questions?
I don't.
I feel like we might have already answered this, but has Broadway gotten better in terms of a diverse cast?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it has. That being said, it's not enough, not to me. But I do feel that now, since it's so much in the conversation, I do feel like maybe people will be more aware and trying harder to be more inclusive. But I do feel like, yeah, it's, it's a process. But I do feel like, yes, more than ever, people are trying very, very hard to include kind of like all across the board diversity, which is good, because Broadway should reflect this America. It's America's theater, and not that we have a national theater, but if we had a national theater, it would be Broadway. And that is what I believe. I believe that every American deserves to see themselves represented on stage.
Oh, yeah, of course. I feel like that's all of our audience questions, unless you see any more.
No, I don't.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. We love to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our Q&A with Ann Harada. And on behalf of the Heart of Temecula Leo Club, we would love to thank you for speaking at our webinar and enlightening us with your stories and insight on what it's like to be Asian American in the entertainment industry and your valuable advice.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Quincy Hunter, and I'm co-chairman of Teens Teaching Tech, as well as part of the tech team for this forum. Now we will be taking a brief 5-minute break before our next speaker. We thank you again for your participation, and we will return after a short advertisement. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natalie Price-Fudge, VP of Membership for Heart of Temecula Leo Club, and I want to welcome you to our initiative. The Leos are a branch off the largest community service organization in the world, Lions Club International. What we do in this club is unlike any other. Not only do we have the chance to help out our local community, but we also form a family on the way. The Leo Club offers teens a chance to develop and employ core leadership skills, plan service events, and learn how to effectively communicate ideas. Being a Leo means being in a group that looks over and supports our fellow members. Speaking of which, let's hear from some of our members now.
Hi, I'm Magdalena Scola, and I'm the founder of the Heart of Temecula Leo Club. I founded this club my sophomore year because I wanted volunteering to be something that didn't just look good on a resume, but was enticing for students to start participating in volunteer work. Here at the Heart of Temecula Leo Club, we are not just a group of volunteers, but we're actually a family. And after getting to participate in our forum today, I hope that you're able to see how we operate and that you're motivated to join this family. Or if not this one, a Leo Club near you.
The Leo Club was just like a gateway for me to meet other teens in my community, and especially kids outside of my high school. So it was really cool just to connect with people outside of my circle that I probably wouldn't have met otherwise, and just make some really good friends out of it.
Hi, my name is Caden Hahn, and I serve as the secretary and the chairman for the Teen Teaching Tech program for the Heart of Temecula Leo Club. This club has helped me advance in many skills such as responsibility, communication, and being able to work in a group. I love being a part of these many projects and events that we do together to help advance our community.
All around the world, there are Leo Clubs interested in making a positive impact. We've helped organizations in our community through programs such as Teen Teaching Tech, volunteering at local retirement homes, and even screening for diabetes. The Heart of the Leo Club also offers community service hours and a chance to be further involved. And the Heart of Temecula Leo Club, you can be the change in your community. So call us at 951-331-8661 or visit our website, heartoftemecula.org, and our socials if you're interested in registering.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Olivia Desiree, a board member as well as a moderator for this event, and it is my pleasure to be introducing our next speaker, Lion Nadine Bushell. As a past Leo and past MD60 Council Chair for Lions Club International, Ms. Bushell has already demonstrated exceptional leadership and set an example of how her actions make a difference. Today, she will be sharing her experiences and perspectives from her travels as she walks through engaging personal anecdotes with a moving message. I'm grateful for the opportunity to introduce Lion Nadine Bushell.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Nadine Bushell. If anyone asks who I am, that's all I would say. I have never said I am Nadine Bushell, a Caribbean or Trinidadian national of African descent. That would only arise if I had to fill out an application or other type of form which requested my ethnicity. I wish to really commend the Heart of Temecula Leo Club for being brave enough to host this forum, which tackles an issue many are afraid to confront directly. It is only through these open, frank, but safe spaces that we can truly understand the issue of diversity and what role we can play to eliminate intolerance and inherent biases. Does it matter, my ethnicity? As a child, it was not something that was uppermost in my mind, if at all present. But as you got older, the issue of race, bias, difference, and the effect on society and on you as an individual unfolds. My first real recollection of racist undertones was where there were disputes in my neighborhood. The community I grew up in was a mixed one of Afro-Trinidadians and Indo-Trinidadians. When they were angry at each other, they would refer to each other in derogatory terms. After the dispute, it was forgotten, but as far as I was aware. The next discernible event I remembered where race was highlighted was in secondary school. I was age 13 or 14. I went to a diverse secondary school with Afro, Indo, Portuguese, Chinese, Spanish, Syrian, white, and mixed Trinidadians. A classmate drew a short sticker on the board without meaning anything or attaching any significance to it. However, a Jew who was the daughter of a US diplomat saw it, became very upset, and this resulting in all of us, the whole year group, having to sit in the audiovisual room to learn about the Holocaust for 3 days. Then I cast my mind to an incident last year where my friend's daughter at school was told by another student, "You are Black, go to the back of the line." Imagine in multi-ethnic Trinidad and Tobago in 2019. The person who committed the offense was made to apologize. And I thought, were it the other way around, the response would have been more forceful. What made me say that or think that? No one asked to take the year group to the audiovisual room to sensitize students on the horrors of slavery and how it affected Afro-Caribbean persons. Generally, I have never felt that my race has held me back. This is perhaps because I had a value system inculcated by my family, where you were made to know that you are as good as anyone else, and that if you strive, you will conquer. However, as I lived, I worked, I traveled, and I mingled, I witnessed things, I overheard comments, and I participated in activities where race issues were highlighted. One of the interesting things about racism is it is not always obvious, and its effects are not always obvious. An example of the not so obvious effects of racism is our perceptions of body image. Many young girls of Afro heritage for many years struggled and perhaps still struggle with body image. Did this come from any race-related issues? Many might say no, but I would say yes, it did. The features that were synonymous with Caucasians were deemed to be beautiful: fair-skinned, lean body type, straight, long hair. Those who did not have these features would have been deemed less beautiful, if beautiful at all. This stemmed from a perception of one race being deemed superior to another. However, I am really happy to see that these stereotypes are changing and persons are more comfortable with the way they look. Many women of Afro descent now wear their natural hair, and that diversity in appearance is appreciated. However, in appreciating this diversity, we must not make people feel uncomfortable by over-highlighting what is unique about them. As Ann Northrop said, don't tolerate me as different, accept me as part of the spectrum of normalcy. They are ordinary human beings like everyone else. While nothing might be meant by you, when you highlight what you think are unique characteristics, it may not be interpreted the same way by the recipient. And also, as said by Carlos Fuentes, recognize yourself in he and she who are not like you and me. In professional interactions, for the last 15 years, I have worked in agencies serving many countries, and where colleagues were from various nationalities across the region, across the Caribbean region, and across the world. While by and large, everyone was professional, there were a few occasions when the issue of race came to the fore. Again, not in an obvious manner. So you speak in a meeting, and after you speak or give a presentation, persons of a different nationality to you come up to you looking a bit puzzled. Which country are you from? You are so smart, or some comment to that effect. Now, really, what does that mean? I think, what were you expecting? No one of my race will come up to me and ask me that. And I wondered at the time if it's because I was young, or because I'm from a small island developing state, or is it because I am of Afro descent? I have even had this reaction at Lions events involving persons from outside of my multiple district. It's okay to compliment me, say great presentation. However, the or is not required. Also, for example, you enter the diplomatic line at immigration in an airport, and they tell you to go to the other line. You say you belong in this line. They insist that you don't. You pull out the document that shows that you do belong in the line. You may get an apology. These responses stem from how persons perceive others and based on conclusions they come to as to what you are able to achieve. The organization that I represent, Lions International, the world's largest service organization. Lions and Leos are part of a very diverse organization. We are a microcosm of the world society, and we often have and sometimes reflect the same biases that exist in the world because our membership comprises imperfect human beings with preconceived biases. We have to be aware that while we are grouped according to geographical location, this in large measure reflects cultural and ethnic differences. It is therefore critical for us to ensure that our organization truly embraces diversity and it is not paid lip service. We must ask ourselves, do all of our members, employees, or volunteers have access to everything the organization has to offer? Are members truly involved in all aspects of the organization, not token involvement? Are they really engaged? Do all of our members have access to training opportunities? When we serve others, how do we engage those persons we serve? Do we see only one group of persons as needing help? Do we think that they can contribute to make their lives better? Do we make real efforts to interact and engage with each other when we meet? Or do we remain in our familiar groupings? We must ask ourselves really, why do we do this? Do all our members have the ability to truly influence the decision-making process in the organization? Do all our members have fair access to the top leadership positions in the organization? Our organization provides many opportunities to stamp out intolerance, to truly engage all races, ethnicities, genders, religious persuasion. Let's take advantage of that opportunity. I am happy to have been able to share with you, the Leos of Temecula and the audience, and to be part of this Teen Unity Forum. I will end my contribution with a quote from the Dalai Lama. If we wish to ensure everyone's peace and happiness, We need to cultivate a healthy respect for the diversity of our peoples and cultures, founded on an understanding of this fundamental sameness of all human beings. I thank you for your attention.
Wow, that really opened my eyes. Thank you for that enlightening insight. Now I'll turn it over to Heart of Temecula Leo Club Secretary, Kaden Hahn, to introduce our next amazing speaker.
Hi, my name is Kaden Hahn. I will now be introducing our next guest speaker, Mr. Colin King. He currently serves on the board of directors of the Human Dignity Foundation in San Diego. The Human Dignities Foundation's mission is to improve the quality of life within the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities by promoting responsible philanthropy to enact positive social change. Outside of active participation in the foundation, Mr. King is a staff member at the University of San Diego School of Medicine and is an incoming student for UCSD's Masters in Public Health. Today, his message will provide an inspiring outlook on ways in which to find unity during difficult times of crises. Please welcome Mr. King.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kaden, so much for that introduction. So yeah, the last time we really had an intersection of a pandemic and a social movement was in the LGBT community with the AIDS crisis. So that's a lot of what my presentation will take place on. And yeah, so finding unity in crisis, lessons from the LGBTQI community. First, I'd like to just start with a land acknowledgement. It's a little weird in this virtual setting, but I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land and the original people of the areas on which we're learning and organizing today. So the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation, which is in San Diego, where I work and live, the Luiseno Nation, which is in Temecula, where the Leo Club is, as well as the Serrano Nation, where I've been spending most of my quarantine. So today, these people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the Southern California community, and we are honored to share the spaces with them. We are also mindful that this pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on the Native American and Black communities due to the disenfranchisement of these communities. And you can learn more about the Luiseno tribe in that link there. And if you're not in any of those areas, I really encourage you to take the time to learn about the nations where you're located. So this is me. I call myself, my younger self, a gay bee who was planted in the IE, the Inland Empire, who bloomed in San Diego. So I was born in Fontana, California, and I moved to Highland, California when I was about 9 years old. And the result of that was due to what's known as white flight. It's basically the opposite of gentrification, where if cities become like too, quote, ethnic, a lot of white people end up moving out of those cities and forming their own communities in the suburbs. With that said, I do come from a very conservative family and background, and this is kind of my journey away from that. So when I moved to Highland, California, I really came to age in the Prop 8 and the Obama era. That was all happening when I was around 16. And I was in a US history class, and we had to have a debate about Obama and McCain. And I think that debate really opened my eyes to where I stood politically. And that's when I really started making my own ideas around the political spectrum. And part of that reason was because my parents were very against Prop 8. For Prop 8, which this was a very confusing proposition for everyone. But yes on Prop 8 was basically agreeing to appeal marriage equality for LGBT folks. And so that was a very interesting time in my life with my parents being so against that. And it caused a lot of deep internal trauma, just being in the closet, not wanting to come out because my parents were so opposed to that. And I think a lot of people in my age during this time were experiencing that same thing. In terms of high school bullying, I personally didn't experience any. And part of that was because of my fear of bullying. We had a few LGBT people who were open in our, who were out in our school, and they were constantly harassed. They were constantly told that they had or were going to get AIDS. And that put a lot of fear into me on how my peers would kind of see me coming out in high school. So I definitely did not come out in high school. But when I went to college, I started going to the LGBT Community Resource Center at UCSD. And this really helped me form my own identity and allowed me to come out to family, to peers. And when I came out to my family, my mom said, don't get AIDS. So that kind of fed into that fear, and also had some internalized trauma from that experience. But really, it helped me learn how to like find my family and distance from toxic relationships, particularly family relationships. In the gay community, your family is known less about blood. It's less about blood and more about connection. So we have our own LGBT families who really kind of take care of us in times of need, who watch out for us, who mentor us. And I think that's a very good lesson to anybody from the LGBT community, is definitely finding your own family, finding those people who are going to be there for you through thick and thin. And that family isn't always necessarily about blood relations. And if that relationship is doing more harm than good, that it's okay to exit out of those relationships for your own well-being. And then a second coming out, that's, so I was diagnosed with HIV about 3 years ago, which came with its own set of issues, and I call it my second coming out. There is a huge stigma for people who are diagnosed with HIV, both within the straight and the LGBT worlds, and there's a lot of harassment that comes from both angles. And then I do just want to say that really education is key in terms of people living with HIV, or if you know anyone living with HIV, because if you are on medication and you are taking that consistently and you become undetectable, which means that it's no longer detected in your blood, in your white blood cells, then you can't transmit it anymore. So, and that came out from the CDC. So once that happened, it became a little bit easier to be HIV positive because the education aspect of that became a little bit easier. So yeah, just making sure to educate everyone on that. And then after I was diagnosed with HIV, I really felt lost in the initial stages of that. And so I really tried to find a way to further dive into my community. And so I went to the San Diego LGBT Community Center and joined the Young Professionals Council there, from which a lot of doors opened for me, including the Human Dignity Foundation. And so I joined the board about 2.5, 3 years ago. And what we do is we're a nonprofit that gives grants to smaller nonprofits in the San Diego area dealing with LGBT issues. And so there's 2 organizations that we work with, the Red Dress Party San Diego and the Recovery Ride. And both of those are fundraisers that go into the HIV funding collaborative. And that's the fund that we use to give these types of grants. And so I do just want, the Red Dress Party is actually virtual this year. So if you have the time, I really recommend you check it out. It's on October 3rd. And they're also doing a lot of fundraising efforts up until then. So if you want to get involved in fundraising, it's a good opportunity. And then from the Human Dignity Foundation, I got involved in harm reduction through the Family Health Centers of San Diego, and I volunteer for their Clean Syringe Exchange program. So we work with people who use needles, and we, if they bring a used needle, we give them a clean needle, and that's to kind of reduce the amount of abscesses that we're seeing in the community that uses needles. And then I recently found myself becoming a disability advocate through my job. So I work for the School of Medicine at UC San Diego, and something that I found out a few years ago is that students, people who are accepted into schools of medicine have to sign these things called technical standards, which is basically a way around the ADA because it's self-reporting that you can or cannot perform certain tasks that are, quote, needed for medical school, which isn't necessarily the case. There have been a lot of court cases in the past 10 years or so saying that that's not necessarily the case and that it should essentially be left up to residency programs. So I'm in the process of working with some attorneys in our ethics and compliance department to get those fixed and updated so that we can be more inclusive with people with disabilities. And then just my future. So I'm going into a master's of public health, and that is to kind of pursue these things that I'm already kind of doing. So I'm excited for that. And I just want to take a moment to put up some trigger warnings right now. I am going to be talking about the HIV/AIDS crisis and suicide. And so if those are sensitive topics for anyone, this is the time to kind of check out, mute your mics, because I don't want to do any undue harm. So community in times of crisis, like I said, the last time we really saw a health pandemic, particularly one that was not being addressed by the government, intersect with a social movement was during the AIDS crisis. And so in the next few slides, I really want folks to look for similarities that we're seeing with me presenting about the time of the AIDS crisis, as well as what we're seeing today with the intersection of COVID-19 and the BLM movement. So the AIDS crisis really brought together the LGBT community. I want to highlight the Blood Sisters in San Diego and ACT UP. So the Blood Sisters were a group of lesbian women who were donating blood to AIDS patients, which were disproportionately gay men, where others wouldn't donate blood. The community was being largely ignored, and lesbians really came to our aid during that time. And really, that's when the LGBT community, I think, really started solidifying itself, was through this time of crisis. So that's a picture of them right there. And I do want to also emphasize that gay bars during this time were our community centers and our education hubs. That's where a lot of the information going around about AIDS was, people would come into these spaces and educate us, because once again, the government wasn't really doing anything to educate us and to inform us and to stop this crisis. And that's largely due to the fact that it was affecting a population that was typically not really looked at by the government. And that's exactly what we're seeing today, is that COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting Black and brown bodies, and our government isn't really doing much to stop it. And so down there, that's a protest by ACT UP, which was kind of our BLM at the time. And they were doing die-ins, similar to what we're seeing today. We're seeing a lot of die-ins. And then that, the last picture is the AIDS quilt on the White House lawn, which was our way of showing how many people died during that time. And if you ever have the chance, it kind of goes around the nation. If you have the chance to see it, I really recommend you do. So yeah, this is a video that we're going to play for you all, highlighting the AIDS crisis. And once again, I just want you to try to draw comparisons between what's in this video and kind of what we're living through right now.
Medical news of potentially fatal disease unknown just months ago is spreading so quickly that doctors now say it's a national epidemic.
90% of the cases have turned up in New York and 6 other cities. It is spreading at an alarming rate. Researchers offer little hope for future victims because no one knows what causes AIDS or how to cure it.
722 cases of AIDS have been reported in New York City since the beginning of the outbreak.
Almost half of those diagnosed so far have died. AIDS was once found only among sexually active gay men, but not anymore.
Researchers complain that very little money has been spent nationwide to understand it or to combat it. One reason for that, they believe, is that the primary at-risk population is gay men, who don't carry a lot of political clout.
This epidemic is not going to remain localized in any one group. Epidemics affect people. We need funding to stimulate research to find the cause of this new disease.
Would you support a massive government research program against AIDS?
I have been supporting it. We have $100 million in the budget this year.
The National Academy of Sciences has issued a very stern warning on the subject of AIDS, the current efforts are described as woefully inadequate.
This report calls for the government to spend $2 billion a year on AIDS research and education. The panel urged the use of condoms during intercourse.
We hope it will make the risky situation completely safe, but I don't think there's sufficient research to be certain.
He was tall, dark, and handsome, and he had that name. Word of Rock Hudson's death spread quickly this morning, and friends and associates rushed to his Beverly Hills home.
For the first time today, the government approved prescription sales of a drug to treat AIDS. AZT is not a cure. AZT only seems to extend life for an average 9 months.
We want more experimental drugs tested in more people as quickly as possible. People are dying, we're caught in the middle, and we don't know what to do except protest and protest and protest. I would like you to join us in an act of activism.
Paul Watford,
Michael Talbot,
Rodney Arthur,
James Mincy.
A quilt made by Americans across the country was unfurled.
He was diagnosed with AIDS 5 years ago when he was 13, one of the first children known to have AIDS at that time.
There's a real danger right now of complacency in the fight against AIDS, because a lot of people feel, well, gee, I'm not going to get it.
Because of the HIV virus that I have attained, I will have to retire from the league.
Officials at the World Health Organization say that 4 million women will die of AIDS by the year 2000.
I found out that I had been infected with the AIDS virus.
I asked the Republican Party to lift the shroud of silence which has been draped over the issue of HIV and AIDS.
AIDS patients are not to be pitied. None of us want pity. We do want compassion. We do want understanding.
The Scientific Advisory Panel has recommended that the Food and Drug Administration approve a new drug called the most important advance since AZT.
It's a step in the right direction. AIDS patients are living both better and longer. New York, which has the highest number of AIDS patients in the country, has shown a dramatic decrease in the number of AIDS deaths, a 30% drop.
We have a fresh reminder this morning that the AIDS epidemic is anything but history. A report from the United Nations says that despite promising new treatments, more than 33.5 million people are now infected with HIV, and that number is expected to keep climbing.
Despite what you may have heard, I am cured of the AIDS virus.
We can now say with some confidence that we have the scientific basis to bring an end to this epidemic. We're not sure when that's going to happen, but we know it's possible.
You could have imagined that we'd be talking about the real possibility of an AIDS-free generation. We've got to keep fighting. Fight for every person who needs our help today, but also fight for every person who didn't live to see this moment. Keep fighting for all of them, because we can end this pandemic. We can beat this disease. We can win this fight.
Yeah, so once again, I just want you to draw some similarities between kind of that video and what we're seeing today, besides just Dr. Fauci being at both of them. But what we're seeing is that people were not taking coronavirus seriously while it was infecting communities of color. It was really only when celebrities started getting it or children started getting it that the government started like doing anything, which was too late. So yeah, just make sure to kind of, yeah, anyway, so we can go to the next slide and I'll go back to that a little bit later. But now I want to talk about kind of where we are in terms of this pandemic, especially for LGBTQIA youth. And everything that I say statistically is going to be even more so severe for people of color, so specifically queer and trans people of color. So LGBTQIA plus youth are more likely to commit suicide already before the pandemic. And so I think we really need to be something that like I've really, that's resonated with me going into this pandemic is we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat. And that is true for our LGBTQIA plus peers as well as people of color. And so we can go to the next slide. This is basically just people are more likely to commit suicide, cause harm to themselves if they're LGBTQIA plus. And then isolation in itself is life-threatening for LGBTQIA plus youth. So here are some things that might be happening for our youth during this time is a potential lack of counseling since a lot of youth get counseling through their schools, a lack of an escape from toxic family members, and then some statistics about LGBTQIA plus youth and family, once again, before coronavirus, which is being exacerbated by coronavirus, is that there are lower levels of parental closeness, there are elevated rates of parental abuse, there are elevated rates of homelessness, and there are elevated risks of PTSD and sexual minority use. So these are all things that are affecting LGBTQIA plus youth at a disproportionate rate than kind of you if you identify as straight. And so some things that we can do to find unity in this time of isolation and some things that I've been doing myself. For high school students especially, you can really advocate for priority counseling for your LGBTQIA plus peers. Once again, in particular, those who are people of color or trans. You can have online game nights. All of these, make sure that you're just including a lot of people who are going through probably like a little bit harder of a time than you if they are included in one of these identities. So have online game nights, include your peers, check in with your LGBTQIA plus peers, make sure to be direct, empathetic, and vulnerable. This is kind of a sample text that I will send my friends who I think are struggling through these times. So this week was really tough for me. Kind of that's where the empathetic part comes in. It's hard not having an escape from my parents. How are you holding up? So it shows that I'm going through something as well. It gives them the opportunity to open up. And it also just gives them the opportunity, if they're not ready to open up, to kind of just be like, oh, you know, I'm doing okay. And then just make sure to continue making plans with your friends. There are studies that have shown that making plans with people who might be having thoughts of suicide with specific dates decreases the risk of suicide. So continue making plans, make dates with your friends, make sure that they're low risk activities so that you're not gonna be spreading coronavirus, have some phone dates, once again, game nights and stuff like that. And then I just wanna end on a positive note. So make sure that you're staying positive. Something that I've started doing is really meditating and sometimes journaling on what COVID-19 has given to me rather than taken away. So one of the things, Black Lives Matter in the pandemic, Black Lives Matter has been around for a very long time, but it's never had the impact that it's had until the pandemic. And I think there's a reason for that. Whether it be more people are on social media, more people are working remotely, so they're able to go to these protests that are happening. I think the pandemic and Black Lives Matter kind of intersecting during this time really made for a more powerful movement than we've seen for the past like 6 years or so. So that's a plus. And then just being able to experience more time with family, friends, and pets. So I've really used this time to repair some relationship with my parents. I've been spending a lot of time with them as I'm working remotely, which has really had a positive impact on me and my family relationships. Finding new ways to connect. I haven't seen some of my high school friends for years. And we started doing a monthly game night. And so just really focusing on those kind of virtual aspects of this and hopefully continuing to implement them in the future would be really beneficial since, you know, like when you grow up and you're living on other sides of the country, or the world, it's really hard to connect with those people. And I think coronavirus and virtual connection has really given us new ways to connect with those folks. And then I personally got a new puppy, or my parents got a puppy that I've been spending a lot of time with. And so that's been a really fun time for me. And then the next slide, just resources in Temecula, since I know that the Leo's Club is in Temecula. Like the city supervisor earlier said, make sure to vote. If you're not old enough to vote, make sure to register people to vote, to be active in politics. This is a very important time for that. And then also just what happens if something I'm passionate about doesn't exist in Temecula or wherever the audience is located. Don't shy away from starting something new. There's a lot of things in a lot of different cities around the nation, whether that be New York City, San Diego, LA, you know, wherever. So finding those organizations that already exist, reaching out and trying to start something in your local city. Don't ever shy away of starting something new. So. Yeah, and then that's just references, so I can go ahead and take some questions and hopefully answer them.
Thank you, Mr. King, for your presentation. We will now move on to the audience's questions. Our first question asks, how have you grown as a person being a part of the Human Dignity Foundation?
Yeah, so like I kind of said, it really helped me find my purpose after being diagnosed with HIV. I was very, very, very lost. And Human Dignity Foundation really allowed me the opportunity to get more involved within my community and educate myself on kind of my own identity. And so with that being said, I really encourage people to volunteer, to get on boards with nonprofits. There's a lot of, especially if you're a person of color or a woman, a lot of boards we're seeing have low representation of women or people of color. So really get involved in your local community, and it does a lot of good.
We are running out of time, so if you would like to ask Mr. King a question, you can message him privately. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks so much.
To conclude this forum, I'm delighted to introduce Lions Club's past international president and foundation chairperson, Gudrun Ingvadotter, who will be speaking on the importance of empathy, kindness, and service in order to stand up to injustice. As a background, the Lions Club International serves as the largest community service organization worldwide, encouraging international understanding and humanitarian efforts, one community at a time. In 2018, Lion Gudrun served as the first female international president of the Lions Clubs International, promoting the value of Lion membership by emphasizing unity, diversity, and innovation. During her presidential term, she launched a program titled New Voices to promote gender parity, diversity, and underrepresented populations within the organization. It is a privilege to be able to share her message with you today. Without further ado, I am honored to introduce to you Chairperson Gudrun Ingvadotter.
Greetings, Heart of Temecula Leo Club and friends. My name is Gudrun Ingvadotter, and I join you today from my home in Iceland as a proud Lion of nearly 30 years. I also join you today as chairperson of Lions Clubs International Foundation, or LCIF. In my role as LCIF chair, I have many opportunities to visit Leos and Lions around the world and see the incredible difference they are creating in their communities with support from LCIF. I have witnessed their hard work, and I have been grateful for the opportunity to share my thoughts with fellow humanitarians and to listen to theirs. Today, however, is so very powerful and moving to me. And that's because of you, Each one of you joining today's Heart-to-Heart Teen Unity Forum gives me incredible hope for our future and for our present. Thank you for the extraordinary gift. Before we move on, I offer my sincerest hope that you, your friends, and family are doing well and keeping safe. I am grateful for the technology that has brought us together and that is keeping the world connected as we shift to gathering virtually for exciting and important events such as this. I suspect you are quite savvy with the technology and have not missed a beat. Indeed, COVID-19 has forced all of us to do and think in new and different ways. I suppose that is one silver lining in this challenging time. Heart of Temecula Leo Club, thank you for organizing this wonderful event and inviting me to be part of it. I am proud of you for standing up for what you believe in and for beginning and continuing such a critical dialogue with members of your community. Leos and Lions are part of a global network of volunteers working together to make a difference for the neighbors, for those who are vulnerable. We take action to make our communities better. We lead by example. We build relationships to build stronger futures and healthier lives. Most importantly, we improve the world through kindness and empathy. As the younger members of Lions Clubs International, Leos embody the best qualities of our incredible organization. You are devoted youth who realize the power of action. You are exactly what our world in needs right now. Today, you come together with open minds and open hearts to learn from each other and to become even better humanitarians. Thank you for recognizing and embracing the power of kindness and empathy. We need more of what you bring to the table. Do you all know that LEO is actually an acronym and what the initials L, E, and O stand for? It's not an accident that LEO stands for leadership, experience, and opportunity. You, Heart of Temecula Leos, have infinite possibilities to become strong leaders here in Temecula and beyond. Adept at showing true empathy and kindness even in the most difficult moments. You are leaders who stand up for themselves and for those who are different, and for what is good and right and imperative. You also have limitless opportunity to broaden your minds, learn from others, and grow. Immersing yourself in experience unlike your own will help you understand and appreciate others' points of view and how they arrived at them. I hope you will forever be thirsty for knowledge and passionate about equity and diversity. You have already taken an important step in that direction by joining us today. I suspect it's not your first such step, and I'm sure it won't be your last. Thank you for continuing the important momentum you're building at this very moment. My travels for our organization did not begin when I started my journey as LCIF chair. For the past 6 years, as an executive officer of Lions, I've had, as I mentioned, the distinct privilege to travel the world and meet fellow humanitarians in the greatest service organization in the world, Lions Clubs International. At each stop, I listened to them and those they've helped. I opened my mind to absorb and appreciate their unique experience and perspectives. I have yet to meet two people who have identical backgrounds, struggles, triumphs, and personality. Yet, one thing resonates with every fellow human being I've encountered in crisscrossing planet Earth. Empathy and kindness matter. Empathy and kindness enable us to understand others. Empathy and kindness are our path forward. We are often told that empathy means to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, but it's so much more. It's taking time to listen without judgment or interruption. It is approaching tough conversations with thought and openness. It is seeking and embracing voices that do not sound like our own. It's being willing to learn and grow through our mistakes. Leos, you hold a very special place in my heart. You are the future of Lions organization, our communities, and our world. I'm always proud of and awed by your unfailing willingness to jump in when others need help, your eagerness to amplify what is just, and the voices of those often marginalized, your commitment to push boundaries you feel are unfair. Lions say kindness matters, and I couldn't agree more with that statement. Kindness is how we must approach the world if we are to make a difference in a child's day, a family's life, a community's ability to thrive. In approaching the world with kindness, we open our hearts and minds to learning and growth. Thank you for leading the way. Once again, to the heart of Temecula Leo Club. As we all sit before our screens today, instead of beside our fellow Leos and friends, we are reminded that life has settled into a new normal, one that is taking some getting used to and challenging our patience as much as our creativity. Thank you for tapping into your Leo spirit and remaining confident and committed in the face of injustice, while in the midst of a global pandemic. And always, our world has changed dramatically, making the need for all of you greater than ever. As you continue working to create a profound difference, please remember that LCIF provides Leo service grants of up to $5,000. Please take advantage of these grants and funds. These are made available so empathic, kind, thoughtful, and dedicated leaders like you can expand your impact and pave our path forward. Please know how very proud I am to serve alongside you as a Lion, as a humanitarian. Until our paths cross again, I wish you good health, much happiness, and a most enjoyable forum. Thank you so very much.
Before we conclude this forum today, I would like to thank our speakers for their time and effort throughout the preparation for this event. On behalf of the Heart of Temecula Leo Club, I would like to extend our thanks to our attendees who have supported our Leo Club's first virtual webinar. We hope you will all leave with a greater understanding of the existing injustices within our community, while striving to embrace a more accepting and empathetic perspective of others. Each step we take on the right path is another step towards self-betterment. I would also like to give a special shout out to Beth Lascola, the Heart of Temecula Leo Club advisor, for assisting the Forum Committee in the developments behind this endeavor. Finally, we would like to invite all of the teens joining us for an interactive teen follow-up to discuss the vitality of the topics that were mentioned today. More information and updates regarding this follow-up event will be sent out via email in the next couple weeks. With that, I would like to officially conclude the Heart to Heart Teen Unity Forum. Thank you so much for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day wherever you may be.